two of our discussion about politics
Absolutely.
and brand.
Yeah.
With both Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott, and you were going through their brands and how you relate to them, and you're someone who analyses brand a lot.
Yeah.
It's what you do. With both of them, I'm hearing some really strange positioning, and I'm wondering whether you agree with this. There is, on one hand, a rush to comfort a group of xenophobic ageing conservatives, which I actually thought were dying. I mean, I actually thought that was a much smaller group in our community than is apparent with the behaviour of Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott, while at the same time they're also trying to assert some kind of liberalness and generosity to middle-class working families. Yep. Is there any clarity to you in all this positioning?
It's such a mess. It really is, and every day it's just more of I just look at it as vote buying.
Well, there's just stereotyping going on.
There's stereotyping going on. There's vote buying going on. It's like, oh, I'm going to an aged care place and I'm going to announce we're going to throw however many millions of dollars at this piece, and then I'm going to do this over here and throw more. And it's just throwing money to buy certain interests over to your side. It's short-termism. It's not in the political or country interests for the long term or even the medium term that I can see. It's unfortunately the way politics has evolved and what people almost expect. I mean, can you imagine if a political party were to come out and say, okay, this is our budget, this is how we look at what we're looking at from a budget standpoint. We're not going to make any specific interest promises, but here's what our vision is for this country. In the Obama campaign several years ago, there was a lot of talk about his ability to talk to the better angels, people's better angels.
What do you mean by that?
Well, and it's help people to see a future and a vision beyond their day-to-day interest. Right, so our better angels as people is, that side of us that does have compassion, that has empathy, that has, that has an interest in the welfare of society as a whole and our place within it, rather than our own personal, what's in it for me. And he had a real ability to do that. Now, legislating that against that and executing against that is proving to be a lot more complicated, as it would be. However, there's not even a smidge of that.
In fact, we have the opposite. It's more, and I did notice Julia Gillard talking about, well, we don't want a big Australia. Well, who doesn't want a big Australia? She doesn't want to. I actually am in two minds. I actually don't mind the population growth. I've seen some really great changes, and certainly in the final years of running Arts Hub, some of the staff we hired in the latter years were both fabulous, but they were from other places, and they were really good at what they did because they brought other perspectives. This bigger, we don't want a big Australia. It's in the negative, isn't it? And
it's this framing stuff where everything's framed. I mean, you see. I think there was a lot of commentary made after the debate, actually, between Gillard and Abbott, that every point that Tony Abbott made was negative, was in the negative, was negative.
Yeah, what does that say about your political brand? Because
it says something really strong about your political brand.
That when he's making decisions about the country, that he's going to throw to a negative perception on something, that he isn't able to engage a more a broader range of options. What do you think?
I think that's a really good observation, and I would agree with it. I mean, if we look at for example, the issue of immigration and the ridiculous focus that the coalition is putting on the boats. We've got to stop the boats. It's like,
what are they, 0.5%?
It's just right. And there's such an opportunity by the government to actually raise the dialogue there and really present the picture of what that's actually about, instead of appealing to the race to the bottom and appeal to everybody's fears and appeal. There's a reason people do it. It works. Unfortunately, the other side is much harder. But when people try for it, when they actually do that, it's so powerful. It is so powerful, and there just doesn't seem to be any leadership that has the ability to take that, and I don't know what that says about their personal brands and what that says about the party brands, because there is an intersection of those things.
Yeah,
of course.
Michelle, I mean, politicians, and I think this gets to that point, are notorious for scrapping their way into key positions, and people could highlight how Julia Gillard is in the position of Prime Minister as demonstrating that. And then once they're there, they claim the high moral ground and they state who they are and what they stand for. However, the journey getting there displays completely other characteristics.
Exactly.
Is there a better type of political brand than this possible for contemporary politics?
I mean, I'd love to think so. I'd love to think so. But I'm not sure the political...
Is it the angels versus devils?
I think it is somewhat of the angels versus devil things, but then you bash that up against the reality. And I think what happens is the political reality of you've got to scrap your way up, and it's not till you've done that you can get to the point where you actually have a chance to voice. But of course, in the way that you've gone about it, you demonstrate. I mentioned,
if you still know who you are by the time you're there.
Now, by all accounts, and I haven't, this is just off the cuff because I haven't really spent a lot of time examining it, and I think it would be an interesting exercise. By all accounts, Bob Brown is someone, as a personal brand, who has, through his rise and through the way he operates today, maintained his integrity.
He also has a lovely sense of authority that comes from that has come from years of being authentic and maintaining that integrity. He has a natural authority flowing from that, and that's not a forceful authority, it's a natural authority.
Yeah, and a scuttlebutt just things that I've heard anecdotally is that he actually does have a lot, I mean, in the corridors of Canberra, he has absolute respect from people. He is known for his integrity. He is known as someone you can trust. You know, in a political environment, that's enormous. And so, you know, as something to aspire to for our other leaders, maybe they don't need to look as far as they think.
Do you know what's really interesting is I feel that the big parties actually would say, well, it's easy for Bob because he's not in the firing line like we are. However, he chose his brand of politics based on his values a long, long time ago.
Absolutely.
What's stopping someone who's chosen the Labor Party or the Liberal Party from actually bringing the same sense of integrity but to that different set of values? They would disagree though, wouldn't they? They would say it's all too hard and you can't do it in this
I think a lot of people would disagree and say it's too hard in this cauldron. I mean, the machinations of party politics are way beyond me. I mean the backroom dealings, and it's just like, wow, why would you subject yourself to that in any situation? However, you've got to believe that somewhere along the line, you know, that someone can rise through that and maintain a sense of integrity. And I don't believe that. I think Julia Gillard in general until recent events where she was dumped into the position of Prime Minister. I remember when I moved back from the States to Australia a couple of years ago and she came onto my radar screen, I was just like, you know, I think that woman will end up being Prime Minister of Australia one day. Never for a minute did I think it would be by deposing the current Prime Minister. I actually thought that, you know, perhaps she's the natural successor to who was then the Prime Minister in Kevin Rudd, and that made a lot of sense, and I could see that playing out. And she had, to my mind, really fairly much maintained her integrity through her rise, you know, and she was known to be a tough performer and, you know, and pretty rigorous in the way she went about things. That speaks volumes. She rose fairly quickly through the ranks, so that says a lot about her, that she was able to do that. The fact that she got hijacked through this other process and allowed herself to be hijacked through this process, she's not without complicity in this whole thing, you know, that raises questions. And I think that's what a lot of people are reacting to.